Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. So today is a Sunday, it's going to be a nice chilled out vibe of a video. If you're new to the channel, hello, I'm Emma, I'm an illustrator based in Sheffield in the UK and these are my daily-ish vlogs. Because it's Sunday and because I've had a really lazy start, I've done a bit of gardening, I've put the washing on, all those kind of jobs that you do at the weekend. I was going to answer a question that someone had asked in the comments, but I can't find that question now for love nor money. I've been trying. But basically, the question kind of went like this. Why, after self-publishing my first children's book, am I now pursuing more traditional forms of publishing? It's a really good question, and there's nothing wrong with self-publishing at all. I really like the idea of self-publishing because you've got complete control over who you get to print your books, the type of paper that you use, who you approach to sell your books. The thing is, when you're self-publishing, it's a lot of work. So I self-published in 2020. If you don't know the story, I'll just do a quick overview. So my first children's book is called Our Dave, which was written initially as a gift just for my partner's sister. And the more I wrote it, the more I illustrated it, the more I thought, actually, this is really good and I want it to have a wider audience. And if it weren't for the time scale, I probably would have tried to approach publishers, but it kind of happened organically because we wrote the story about our cat Dave and his story of adoption from the cat shelter to us. And because it was for my partner's sister's birthday, we had that time limit of however many weeks it was or months it was until the birthday. So because I already had my small business, Embers and Ink, and therefore I had a platform to sell it through, I decided to do a crowdfunder to raise the money for the printing of the book. And because I already had Embers and Ink, my small business, as a platform to sell, I would be able to sell it through my own shop. So that's why I decided to do that in that kind of way. There is loads of information to learn about self-publishing. If you're wanting to self-publish your own book, definitely get clued up on it because there are scammers out there, guys. There are basically scammers out there. And my biggest take-home tip, if you are thinking about self-publishing, is to buy your own ISBN and register it in your name. In the UK, you buy them from a company called Nielsen. I'm not sure what it's like for the rest of the world, but definitely buy your own ISBN and register it in your name. Now, some people might have found online some places that offer a free ISBN. I know Amazon used to offer it with their print-on-demand service. Some printers might offer it. I saw a few people offering them. Basically, don't accept those because they will most likely be registered in that company's name. Therefore, they own your book. So don't inadvertently sleepwalk into giving away your ownership of your own work. So make sure you are clued up and you read up about how to keep ownership of your work. Because if you're self-publishing, you're probably going into it because you want that control over your book. So basically do a bit of reading up about it. I do have a tier on my Patreon. It's not one that I update regularly, but whenever I learn something about the self-publishing industry or the traditional publishing industry, I'll pop a video up on there. But bear in mind, it's not a regularly updated tier. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it might be worth dipping into, and then feel free not to stay a member of that tier and you can become a free member again, and then you can dip into it every now and then when new information gets put in there. So it's not the kind of tier that I necessarily expect you to stay a member of month after month, unless you want to use it as a way of pledging a little bit more. That's completely fine, it's up to you. But over on my Patreon, I do have a few bits of key information that I gathered from my self-publishing journey, all the information that I learned. And I've popped a few videos up there, and I am aiming to get a few more up there as well. Basically, that's one of the reasons that I want to start pursuing traditional publishing. It's not because I don't enjoy self-publishing, it's just there is so much to learn and so much to be aware of. When you're doing self-publishing, it's all on you. You've got to be the marketer, you've got to be the purchaser, you've got to advertise your products. That's marketing, isn't it? You've got to be aware of all of the loopholes, all of the requirements, all of the potholes that you could fall down, because it's just you. You don't have a team backing you up, which is fine, But it's a lot of work, and I've got other things that I want to do than be my own publisher. Being a self-publisher, you've basically got to do all of the jobs involved in a traditional publishing house yourself. Self-learned, usually. I very much doubt that people out there who want to self-publish are people who have already worked in the publishing industry. I mean, if you have, kudos, you've got all the information there. But it's basically a lot of work, and it's work that I could do. I'm not saying you can't do it. It's work that I could do. So if I can do it, you can do it. But it became a full-time job. And I know that with Our Dave, I didn't market it enough. I didn't push it enough because I had my own small business to get on with. I had other stuff like my illustration journey that I wanted to focus my time on as well. And I didn't want marketing my book to be my full-time job. Also, with a traditional publishing house, you do have, well, like I was saying before, you do have a team around you. But you've also, it's not just to make sure you don't fall down any legal potholes, as far as I can gather. As far as I can gather anyway. I've not done it firsthand yet. But I've done a few courses about publishing children's books and traditional publishing. And you basically have a creative team on your side to help you make the best book possible. So it's not just you looking at your illustrations and maybe sending off to a few friends to get some feedback. You've got professionals in the industry who have got experience and knowledge of the industry and of making books and publishing books to help you with your images and your story content, your story arc, making sure you've got the page turns, making sure it's paced well. Making sure it's age appropriate as well, making sure your words make sense, making sure you're making the best book possible. And you've got whole creative teams who help you with that. So it's less lonely because self-publishing is just you. It's just you, which is fine, and it's good to have the creative control. But I do kind of crave a team to help with that kind of thing because you can get caught up in your own head. And sometimes when you look too hard at something, like a piece of work, piece of art, piece of whatever you're doing, you stop being able to see it for what it is, and you see it in a different way. So it's why sometimes I put work away and then come back to it later with fresh eyes, because you see it differently. And I think having a team around you would be beneficial in that kind of way. So they'll be able to see things that you can't because you're so deep into it. So yeah, I'd be looking forward to having a team around me to help me get the best book and best story out there possible. So that's one reason. Another reason is that publishing, well, printing, making a book, however you want to describe it, publishing, printing, creating, is expensive. A picture book is expensive. The printing is expensive. Just the bare bones practicality of getting a book out is expensive. So if you're self-publishing, you probably have to crowdfund, which is a blessing, to be honest, to the self-publisher. So if you're self-publishing, crowdfunding is a great way of talking about your book before it exists. So you're trying to encourage people to be on board with your story, and it's a really good way of getting an audience for your book immediately. And also, you've got a real connection to the people who fund your book because they've believed in you before it was even a thing. You know, I once met someone who funded my book on the Kickstarter. I met them at a market and we were having a little chat. And you know how grateful I am to those people who took a chance with helping to fund and make my book a reality. I am so grateful to those people. But it's definitely something to bear in mind if you are going to self-publish. You'll probably need to do a crowdfunder. And if you do a crowdfunder, my advice would be to read all of the help that crowdfunder gives you to make your crowdfunder as good as possible. So I did this when I used Kickstarter for mine. There are other crowdfunding websites out there, or organisations out there. But I read all of their help, I watched all of their videos, and in the end, I made a really good video about my project and Kickstarter ended up making it a project we love, which meant that they showed it to more people, and it was highlighted on their Projects We Love page. So that definitely helped to get more people's eyes on the project. But bear in mind that printing a children's book, well, printing any picture book, because it's colour pages, is expensive. So yeah, you'll probably need to do a Kickstarter. That's another reason that I want to explore traditional publishing, because running a Kickstarter is a whole operation in itself. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and like I said, it does have its benefits. It does have its really positive sides in terms of gaining attention for your project. But again, it's time and effort, and there's only so much of that to go around. So being part of a traditional publishing team, I think will be interesting because they deal with the finances. So that's the thing that I'm really interested in exploring with a traditional publisher, not having to be in charge of all of the finances as well. Because like I say, printing a coloured picture book is expensive. The third reason that I'm interested in pursuing traditional publishing contracts is basically to get my story and my book to as wider audience as possible. Like I said before, traditional publishing houses have marketing teams. They've got the contacts with bookstores, and it's tricky when you're doing it on your own. Sometimes you approach bookshops and they only accept books who are distributed through a certain distribution channel, so they won't look at self-published books. Independent shops are more likely to, but then you've got to, again, it comes back to money. You've got to think about your trade price. And printing books is expensive anyway, but the money that you're asking for when you're self-publishing for your book, you've got to make sure that you can sell your book for the right price. So there's no, for example, children's books are generally around the $6.99, $7.99 price point. Generally, children's books don't go too far above or too far below that kind of mark. So your book is going to have to be sold at about $6.99, $7.99 to compete with the other books that it's going to be on the bookshelf with. If you bought your books and each of your books cost you $6.99, when you sell it, there's going to be no profit. So you also need to have that kind of that business brain when you're self-publishing. So you ideally want to be getting each book as cheap as possible from your printer. So like if you can spend £2 on a book, brilliant. If you can get less than that, amazing. But the more books you buy, the lower the unit cost. But basically you need to be making sure that you've got enough money when you sell your book to make it worthwhile, to make it a project that you can pay your bills with. And that's something you need to be paying attention to when you're self-publishing, when you're approaching bookshops, because bookshops will be wanting to buy your book at about 45% of its retail price. And that's like less than half price. So under £3.50 for a $6.99 book. And you need to be making profit on that half price. So there's so much to think about. So basically you'll be wanting to buy, ideally if you want to buy your books for around £1 each, maybe less, maybe a little bit more, depending on what kind of profit you're looking for. But if you want to be successful and you want to pay your bills with the things that you're putting out there, it's basically what I'm saying is it's a lot to think about as one person who just wants to write a book and illustrate it and get your book out there. You don't only have your illustrator hat and your author hat, you've got to have your marketing hat, your mathematics hat to work out all of the trade prices. You've got to have your sales hat. You've got to have your Kickstarter hat. There's such a lot to do. And like I say, getting your book into shops isn't necessarily as easy as you think it's going to be. Even if you've got the right price point and you can make money from the book at the price that the bookshop wants to buy your book for or order your book for, there's no guarantee that they will want to stock your book because, like I say, they might get their books from a distributor which you don't have access to. I was lucky because I had my own small business, so I was already selling products which I could then add my book to. The places that sell my Embers and Ink products, I could then pitch that as another product for them to sell, which worked for me. But not everyone out there, not all of you guys will have that option. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm not at all saying it's not possible, but self-publishing is more than just having an idea for a book and getting it printed. You've really got to go into it seriously. Not that I'm saying you can't. Like I say, if I can do it, you can do it. It's possible. You've just got to really want to do it. And I think going into it with your eyes open, knowing that it's going to be a lot of work, is very beneficial. And you might find it less hard work than I did. So if you go into it thinking it's going to be hard work, and then you find that actually your skills mean it's a lot easier than I found it, then it's going to be an easier job for you. I don't want to give you an idea that it's all sunshine and roses. It's not. It's hard work. There are really great things about it. I loved the control of self-publishing. I loved it being my product from beginning to end. Everything about that book was me, 100%, even down to the font that I used, But to get any money from it, and let's face it, at the end of the day, you've got to pay your bills, and you've got to if you're going to do something that involves this much energy and this much time, you've got to make sure that you are making it sustainable. You've got to make sure that it is actually bringing in enough money for you to pay your bills. And it can totally do that, but you've just got to be aware that it's a lot of work. I'm not saying that I wouldn't self-publish again. I've got a story, in fact, that I wrote before I took my year out to kind of do all of these courses and get my head in gear and practice my sketchbooks and really work on my illustration. I got through the majority of the book because I was planning to self-publish it anyway. It's before I really kind of started digging deep and thinking seriously about my illustration, and where I really developed my idea that I wanted to pursue traditional publishing. When I was still thinking I was definitely going to self-publish all the time, I wrote and illustrated another book. I've got like a few double page spreads to do on it, so that will probably be self-published. So I'm not saying I'd never do self-publishing ever again. It's definitely part of my plan, but I would like to explore traditional publishing. I'd like to get an agent. I'd like to get affiliated with a publisher. The person who asked this question did mention something about the problems of AI in the industry at the moment. And I do think that is really important, not just in the publishing industry, but in all aspects of our work life. I do think we need to be concentrating on our contracts. I can't remember who it was, but I saw something on Instagram where there was a well-known illustrator who was in negotiations with their publishers. I don't know who the illustrator is. I don't know who the publishers is. So, don't go spreading this information too widely. Take it with a pinch of salt. But the story basically went that they were in negotiations with their publishers because in the contract, there was a new clause in the contract which said that the publishers were looking for the right to train AI on this illustrator's images. That could potentially, if you took it to its logical conclusion, mean that this illustrator didn't have a job in the future, because if they agreed to have AI trained on their images so that the publisher could use AI trained images to fill the gaps, rather than negotiating. I'm assuming it was for something like, rather than having to negotiate slight changes, minor changes, they could use AI trained technology to do that without negotiating with the illustrator. But then take that to its logical conclusion. Why do you need an illustrator at all? Because they've got this AI that's trained in exactly how this illustrator made their book. So what's stopping them from making a whole book without the illustrator? And it's something you've really got to pay attention to, and it's definitely something in terms of contracts that I'm going to be hopefully getting, that I will definitely be looking out for things like that in my contracts, because AI is being trained on skills that have been hard learned from us. We've taken years of emotional toil and strain over our sketching and sketchbooks, and skills that we've learned through trial and error and mistakes, and all of those years of building up our skills. It could potentially be for nothing. So basically, that's something I'm keeping an eye on. I know you mentioned it in the question. I wouldn't sign up to any contract or any publishers. I'd have to read the contracts, and I'd have to make sure that my intellectual property was always respected and always remained mine. But that should be something we're all doing anyway. We should all be keeping an eye on our contracts, especially in this brave new world. Who knows where this technology is going to go? And, not to scaremonger, but I do think we need to keep an eye on all of our contracts of employment, no matter what area they're in. But yeah, I would definitely be looking out for that anyway, because I don't want to be written out of a job just because I was eager to accept a contract. So be aware and just have the self-control and self-confidence, I suppose, have the self-confidence to be able to say, this part of this contract, I don't agree with that. Which is why I'd need an agent, I think, because as far as I understand it, you get a bit of backup and a bit of support if you've got an agent. I'm also looking into joining the AOI, which is the Association of Illustrators. Apparently they offer a great amount of assistance for contracts and stuff like that, so you can get in touch with them and they'll help you negotiate contracts. So that's always an option as well. I need to look into that seriously. But not today. Today is a Sunday. I'm chilling out. I have got my iPad here, and while it's on, I might just finish off those thumbnails that I was doing the other day. They're nearly finished. What I've been doing is just tidying up my thumbnails, which you don't need to do. That's just me being a little bit precious about it. I haven't gone into a lot of detail with them. It's just I've done like a rough scribble, and now I just want to make sure my rough scribble looks like the thing that I intend it to be, but not in a great amount of detail. The idea of a thumbnail process is that it is rough and it's easy to change and it hasn't taken a lot of time. And if you don't know what I'm doing with the thumbnails, I've basically got a few ideas for children's books. So I'm going to thumbnail out the story, how I think it might go. I'm going to do that for like maybe 3 of the stories. And that's when I'm going to start approaching agents and publishers, because then I've got evidence that I've got, a few things under my belt and I'm not just a one-trick pony. So that's that. That's where I'm at the moment. But if anyone's got any advice or feedback or questions, let me know in the comments. I'll look through them, and if it's something that I think will interest a lot of people, I'll make a video about it. So you never know, your question could get used in a future video, and hopefully I might even be able to find the actual question and cite your name as well. But that's where I'm going to leave this video. I hope it's been okay. I hope it's been fairly interesting for you. And like I say, if you've got any questions, pop them in the video comments and I will get back to you. So I'm going to leave this video here. So until the next one, bye.